Welcome back to Cyber Scoops and Digital Shenanigans. I'm Mike Hush. And if you thought 2025 was going to be the year the robots finally took over, well, pour yourself a sip drink because reality just slapped the AI hype train right off the damn tracks. Today we're talking about failure on a grand scale. The failure of AI to launch, the failure of chip manufacturers to take cheap hardware attacks finally seriously, and of course the failure of basic enterprise security. First up, autonomous AI, the trust crisis. Let's start out with the promised land of autonomous agents. You know, the AI that's supposed to handle everything without human input, according to Gartner. But enterprises aren't keen on letting autonomous agents take the wheel. And most IT application leaders are actively avoiding it as well. We're talking about a reality check here. An industry-wide survey of big organizations found that just 15% were even considering piloting or deploying full autonomous agents. While 3/4 of the respondents are messing around with some form of AI agent, they draw the line at going fully autonomous. Why the stall? Simple. It comes down to trust and governance. Companies are terrified. A whopping 74% worried that AI agents represented a new attack vector in their organization. And they should be worried, especially only 19% have a high or complete trust in their vendor's ability to protect against AI hallucinations. Max Gross, an analyst at Gartner, nailed it. Concerns over governance, maturity, and agent sprawl continue to hamper the deployment of true agentic AI. We're seeing the fallout already. Studies suggest over 40% of agentic AI projects might be canceled by the end of 2027 due to rising costs, unclear business value, and insufficient risk controls. Even the giants are struggling, like Salesforce, which we all remember famously slashed thousands of customer support roles in the name of AI, produced figures showing that LLM agents aren't great at customer confidentiality or multi-step tasks. And speaking of bad agents, let's not forget Google Gemini. Remember, security researchers recently found several ways to hack Gemini through something called the Gemini trifecta. These attacks tricked the AI assistant into exfiltrating sensitive data. They used indirect prompt injection, poisoning logs that Gemini Cloud Assistant analyzed. An attacker could slip malicious prompt into a log file, and when the user asked Gemini to explain the entry, basically it executes the attacker's command, like querying all public assets or IAM misconfigurations and sending that sensitive data via hyperlink. They even abused Gemini's search personalization feature by injecting malicious queries into the victim's browsing history. So much for replacing us. The majority of leaders surveyed don't expect AI agents to replace applications or even workers for the next 2 to 4 years. Only 7% strongly agree that they would replace workers in that time frame. So hey, look, the hype is officially dead. Long live the security audit. Now let's pivot to hardware humiliation, where we will find the stark reminder that sometimes the cheapest, simplest attacks are the most devastating. I'm talking about battering ram. This is the new hardware attack that has been demonstrated against both AMD and Intel systems. What does it break? It breaks the highly secure confidential computing technologies like Intel SGX and AMD SEV. These are technologies widely used by cloud providers, designed specifically to protect sensitive data even from malicious insiders or host system attackers. And how much does this highly advanced system breaking device cost? $50. Yep, researchers at UK universities built a device called the Imposer. This thing is playing in between the CPU and the DRAM memory, attached to the DIMM. It sits quietly avoiding detection until you flip the switch. Then it silently redirects protected memory addresses to locations controlled by the attacker. The researcher explains that their stealthy Imposer bypasses both memory encryption and state-of-the-art boom time defenses. Invisible to the operating system, it gives the attacker arbitrary plain text access to SGX protected memory. And here's the kicker. The attack requires physical access to the targeted system. And what did Intel and AMD say when they were notified about these findings in February of 2025? They both published security advisories, but promptly pointed out that the attacks requiring physical access are not in scope for their product's threat model. Seriously? They just shrug off a $50 device that breaks their foundational security features because the attacker has to have physical access to the box itself. And you're killing me, Smalls. The researchers rightly argue that physical access doesn't mean there's no risk. These attacks could easily be conducted by rogue employees, data center technicians, law enforcement, hell, even supply chain attacks during manufacturing or shipping of memory modules. This vulnerability is fundamental. The underlying issue hasn't been fixed, meaning a more advanced interposer can even conduct attacks on DDR memory. And forget about software fixes. The researchers also confirmed that software or firmware updates can't patch the vulnerability. This is truly hardware humiliation, and Intel and AMD are treating it like a damn parking ticket. Moving on to my favorite topic, supply chain attacks. This segment will be called Zero-Day Silence and the Identity Crisis. And yet another story of a security failure and even questionable transparency. Yep, it's your favorite company, Broadcom. Oops, did I really say that? I meant Broadcom. Recently rolled out patches for a high-severity VMware vulnerability, CVE 25.41244. This flaw impacts VMware, RE operations, and VMware tools. It's a bad one, though. It allows unprivileged users to execute code with root privileges on VMs. But the truly scandalous scoop here, provided by Invisio Labs, is that this vulnerability was actually being exploited as a zero-day since October of 2024. Yep, a whole year. That means a Chinese state-sponsored threat actor, tracked as UNC 5174, was exploiting this bug for a damn year. And what did Broadcom fail to do when they issued patches last week? They made no mention of its wild exploitation. Broadcom's public advisories typically warn customers about zero-day exploitations. This zero-day exploitation was silent, impacting the service and application discovery feature in VMware, where a logic flaw allows an attacker to stage a malicious binary, often mimicking system binaries like HTTPD in a broadly matched path, resulting in privilege elevation. UNC 5174, for example, was placing malicious binaries in the temp HTTPD folder. It's another example of how, regardless of billion-dollar infrastructure, the basics fail. And this brings us to the root of almost every modern breach, which is identity. October marks Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and the theme for 2025 focuses on safeguarding critical infrastructure, especially government and small to medium businesses. But the core issue remains the same. Identities are still the most common attack vector. Despite massive investments in security tools, industry reports confirm that more than 70% of all breaches involve the misuse of identities. Attackers aren't hacking in, they're logging in. Phishing for credentials or exploiting overprivileged accounts is cheap and scalable. We saw this play out in the news recently with the Canadian airline, WestJet. The airline confirmed that a June 2025 cyber attack resulted in the theft of customer personal information. The hackers didn't get credit card details or passwords, but they stole names, contact information, government issue IDs, and other reservation data. WestJet is now scrambling to warn customers about identity theft risk and suspicious messages impersonating the airline. This is a reality of 2025, and even years before, and I'm sure next year as well. Whether it's a nation state, actors exploiting VMware zero-day, or run-of-the-mill identity theft from an airline, we're constantly being reminded that identity is actually the new perimeter. Organizations need to shift from reactive compliance to proactive identity security, focusing on things like least privilege and phishing-resistant authentication. Until organizations treat identity as the foundation of security, breaches will keep making headlines. Well, that's it for today. Thanks for tuning in. Remember, trust no one, especially your autonomous AI vendor, and never underestimate the power of a $50 DIY hack. See you next time.